Do you know Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner? Well, in 2016, he did something strange. While scrolling on the internet, he found a book with a bold message: China is to blame for all of America's problems. Curious, Kushner picked up the phone and called the author. Within weeks, that man was sitting inside Trump's Oval Office, helping the President of the United States set the ground for what would become one of the biggest shocks of our time: a global trade war. Now, here's the thing. Everyone knows about tariffs, but most people never even heard the name of the man behind them. A man so controversial that many economists have called him the worst trade advisor in modern US history. So, who is he? And how did he help Trump start a trade war? Well, it all started in 2016. Trump had just won the presidency. He had a slogan, "Make America Great Again," and a long list of problems to solve. But he had no real economic plan. What he did have was rage. Rage at China. Rage about lost jobs. Rage about factories closing in Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. This is when Trump turned to his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. He told him he wanted a strategy that made him look tough, something that would show American workers he was ready to fight for them and punch back at China. Then he asked Kushner to find someone who could turn all these ideas into real policy. At this point, Kushner did what any millennial would do. He went on the internet, and there it was, a book called Death by China. The author, Peter Navarro. On paper, Navarro looked perfect. A Harvard PhD in economics, a professor at UC Irvine, and a man obsessed with a single question: why is China rising so fast? Navarro had spent years trying to understand why Chinese products are so cheap. He even asked his students to research Chinese trade policies. And in the end, Navarro found his answers: currency manipulation, export subsidies, zero labor protections, stolen intellectual property. To Navarro, China wasn't a trading partner, it was an economic predator. So he poured all of these ideas into his book, Death by China. In it, he wrote a clear claim. If you want to understand why American jobs are disappearing, just walk into Walmart and read the labels. Clothing, electronics, food, everything is made in China. And because of that, he said, over 50,000 American factories have closed, 20 million jobs gone, all because of China. He even called the country a weapon of job destruction. And his solution? Tariffs. Big ones. Slap them on Chinese goods, punish Beijing, protect American workers. Sounds familiar? Well, Navarro's book was exactly what Trump needed. It gave him three things: a clear enemy, China; a story easy to sell, Americans as the victims of global trade; a solution that made him look tough, tariffs. So Jared Kushner picked up the phone, he called Navarro, he invited him to join the Trump administration, and just like that, Navarro went from being an unknown academic to a White House insider. He became Director of Trade and Manufacturing Policy and started shaping America's trade agenda. But then, something strange happened. On the other side of the world, somewhere in Canberra, an Australian researcher was studying anti-China rhetoric. During her work, she picked up Death by China and started looking into Navarro's sources, his footnotes, his bibliography. And she noticed something odd. A name kept popping up: Ron Vara. This mysterious Harvard economist seemed to support Navarro's every major argument, especially the most extreme ones. He was literally everywhere in the book's footnotes. But when she looked him up, nothing. No publications, no LinkedIn, no university records. There was no Ron Vara out there. So the Australian researcher called Harvard. Their reply? We have no record of anyone named Ron Vara. That's because Ron Vara doesn't exist. He's completely made up, a fake person invented by Navarro himself, just to quote him in his own book and make his arguments sound more credible. Even the name Ron Vara is just an anagram of Navarro. And yes, even Navarro admitted it. He said he had invented Ron Vara as a little joke, a pen name, just a bit of fun. But there's nothing funny about it, because this fake source helped justify real policies that could reshape global trade and affect millions of lives. And yet, Trump kept listening. even though his #1 trade advisor invented a fake Harvard expert to support his anti-China ideas. Inside the Trump administration, people saw the problem. Navarro was extreme, unpredictable, and often wrong on basic economics. For example, Navarro insisted that tariffs would protect American families. But here is the reality. Importers pay the cost of those tariffs at the border when the products arrive in the US. But then they usually pass the same cost down the supply chain to wholesalers, stores, and finally, the average consumers. So everything from clothes to electronics becomes more expensive. And who pays? The middle and working class Americans, the very people tariffs claim to protect. Many economists also criticized Navarro's work. They said death by China was simplistic and dangerously misleading. It blamed every single job loss on China while ignoring other major forces like automation and the 2008 financial crash. One economist even said, appointing Navarro to run trade policy is basically like putting someone who believes the world is flat to be in charge of NASA. And so many White House officials tried to isolate him, keeping him out of regular meetings and ignoring his advice. But it wasn't enough. Navarro had that one thing that others didn't have: Trump's attention. Whenever a big trade decision was on the table, Trump would reportedly ask, "Where is my Peter?" After Trump lost the 2020 elections, Navarro showed him his loyalty. He refused to testify in Congress for the January 6th investigation and spent 4 months in a federal prison in Florida. Navarro was then released in the summer of 2024, and what did he do next? He rejoined Trump's campaign, more determined than ever to finish what he started. In Trump's second term, Navarro wants to go much further. He wrote multiple documents arguing that any country with a trade surplus against the US should be punished. That means not just China, but India, Japan, the EU, Taiwan, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, basically the whole world. And not everyone in Trump's circle is happy about it. Today, Navarro is in a public feud with Elon Musk. Musk called Navarro dumber than a sack of bricks and even mocked his Harvard degree. Navarro fired back, calling Musk a car assembler who just wants to buy cheap components from China. But regardless of this internal division, every time you hear Trump talk about tariffs, remember this: there's a man who shaped these ideas. Peter Navarro is not just a background character, he's the mind behind the trade war, a man who made up a fake economist to justify his ideas, a man whose marginal theories are now shaping global trade policy. What started as a book on Amazon ended up as a real policy in the White House. Because here's the thing: dangerous ideas can easily become mainstream when amplified by powerful people. And so here we are. A self-radicalized economist with a distorted worldview is now pulling the levers of the global economy. And the rest of us, even if we live oceans away from Washington, may soon feel the consequences. See you in the next video.